Hi, I'm Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Also today in this segment, I'm at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona. The Arizona Railway Museum was founded and incorporated as a nonprofit organization in 1983. It is dedicated to the railroads of Arizona and the southwestern United States. The museum has an extensive collection of railroad rolling stock and artifacts. In 2017, the museum was forced to eliminate the 34-year-long tradition of offering a free admission option. Also, the Arizona Railway Museum has interesting trains to explore and is only open on weekends and closed during summer and major holidays especially. Also, the Arizona Railway Museum was formerly located in Tumbleweed Park in Chandler, Arizona, then relocated to East Rhine Road here in Chandler, where it is today. Also, the collection was growing so big, so the museum moved to this location to have more room. What you see is the exhibits near the gift shop. Also, it was on a tender to a 440. You can see right here, this is a modern railroad tie made of concrete. And also, just this. This is what you see like every day. Also, right here, this is how trains couple. And behind me, you can see that's an old railroad signal. On the tracks. That's how cool this is. Okay, we're in the exhibit hall near the gift shop, so let me tell you about these exhibits. These here are benches used at a train station, depot bench. Also, let me show you around. That's Magma Arizona 7. And I believe it's like on the Texas State Railroad, which runs between Rusk and Palestine, Texas. And that's a map of the Magma Arizona Railroad. And here's the Apache Railway Company, a hat, and green diesels pulling a freight train on the Apache Railway. This is a mannequin of a conductor. And here's a typewriter, don't touch. And right here you can see this is a map of the United States of where all the railroads go. And these here are cabinets like where the paperwork would be stored and such. Also, you could see here here's a picture thing. You can look at it of what the railroads were like in the past. So we use two hands to turn the cubes. Below, there's a model. That's all you can see in trains. This is almost like setting up a train going around your Christmas tree at Christmas time. Except, I do that every year though. Now, this here is a Southern Pacific schedule board. And here's some old lanterns down here, and that's a model of a depot building, and that's a kerosene lamp. off a caboose. And also, you also get free magazines. You can have free magazines for yourself. It's compliments of the Arizona Railway Museum. Right here, here's some tools on the wall. 1 winging bar, 2 journal box tool, forgive me. 7 track wrench, 5 spike mule maul, 3 tie tong, 4 rail tong, and I wonder what this could be. Maybe it's a spike puller. And here's a 9 gauge check, a 10 rail turner, an 11 brake club, and a 12 switch broom. You can see right here, this is what a switchman, what a dispatcher, an old-fashioned computer, like how they control the trains. Here down here is a bell from Rock Island number 1702, a 280, built by Baldwin in 1906. It's retired, so it doesn't exist now. And that bell was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum, and it's unknown of what engine it came from. And here's a sign that says, these premises, 720 feet by about 130 feet, are private property of the CA and SF Railway Company, California, Arizona, and Santa Fe Railway Company, and Arizona Eastern Railroad Company. And I just like how they have all these artifacts like this. This right here is 2 seats from a passenger car, and they just have them sitting right here. It's unknown which passenger car it came from. That stove next to it is a coal burning caboose stove. And I wonder what caboose it might have come from. There's some more exhibits I'd like to show you. See, here's a Southern Pacific police officer with his name tag NL Hill. This is the old days when police officers were dressed like that. Railroad police officers. Like when they caught people vandalizing, trespassing, or whatever. Here's some old brochures right here, and down here, old books. You can see right here. These are just like cigarette lighters, oiling cans, and glass cups. And here's a law rule book and a Pakistan Railways antique plate. And here's some paintings or portraits, pictures, whatever. That's the old Chandler Depot. Here's Southern Pacific 2562 at the Chandler Depot, moving to the park. And here's the sign saying, presented by Southern Pacific Company to the city of Chandler, August 17, 1956. And that's a Chandler sign. So let's see what's behind these doors. What is track gauge? The distance between the rails. What are ties? The wooden beams under the rails. I wonder what this says. It's empty. What are these men called? What are they doing? Those men are known as Gandhi dancers. They are using pry bars to hold the track in place, and the track spikes, the metal. Yeah. place. What is standard track gauge? Track that is 4 feet 8.5 inches between the rails. What are these men doing? These men are relying on train orders. Okay, here we have is just, you could see this is a 3D map of Arizona. And there's Yuma, Adonde, whatever it's pronounced, Maricopa, Casa Grande, Tucson, New Mexico. And here's some tracks, small to large. These look like N-scale tracks. And this tells you the tracks across the territory. Here's Arizona's first locomotive, Southern Pacific 31. And down below, here's an old-fashioned typewriter, an old-fashioned lantern, railroad watches. I don't know. Alright, what you see here, this is some old-fashioned, some railroad plates. They may be China plates. So here's one from Santa Fe Adobe, Santa Fe Griffin, Southern Pacific Sunset, Southern Pacific Monogram, Southern Pacific Golden State, Southern Pacific Prairie Wildflowers, Prairie Mountain Wildflowers. And here's, I better move out of the way, Southern Pacific Mimbreno, Santa Fe Mimbreno, and Santa Fe California Poppy. Also, you could see they have a TV here, and also just showing some random train videos. And here's, they are showing a Union Pacific freight train. And at this point it shows you they're in Grand Island. Okay, you can see here, this is an old-fashioned schedule board. And also, they would just move these and put it somewhere, like chalking them. Also, you can see these are this is the Phoenix Union Station, the Mesa Depot, pictures of them. This door is saying trainmen only, because only train workers. Also, you could see on my left, this is a milepost saying C6. Milepost from the Verde Tunnel and Smelter Railroad, Clarksdale to Jerome, Arizona. And also, that's the Verde Canyon Railway, which runs between Clarksdale and Perkinsville, Arizona. Excuse me. Also, you can see here some old railroad hats and some hard hats and flags, and this button, push it. Oh. It probably shows a video. Here's some old books, and those are Lincoln and couplers, and here's some oiling cans. What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 4603. Southern Pacific 4603 was built in 1987 by International Car Company, Kenton, Ohio. Also, Southern Pacific 4603 is a C50-C-50-9 Southern Pacific 4603 served a short time in railroad service. Southern Pacific 4603 was last used on local branch line and service out of Phoenix, and last use of this cruise was on the Magma right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 16811. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 16811 was built by American Car and Foundry Company in St. Charles, Missouri in 1920, and is a refrigerator car that was used on freight trains. It was used on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. This car was one of 1250 built in the W class. This was the first class of refrigerator car built on a steel frame. This car was built as a wood car. The wooden racks and ice bunkers. Cars in the class RRW were rebuilt by Santa Fe in 1937 with the steel sides and steel floor grates. After the rebuilding, the car was renumbered into the series beginning at 16,000 and given the class designated RR23. This car was donated to the museum by Cactus Distributing of Phoenix. The car is intact and retains the 1937 style ice racks inside. What you see right behind me is Amtrak 1413. Amtrak 1413 was built for Amtrak passenger trains and also is a boxcar used for Amtrak, and was a car constructed for passenger train service and equipped to handle baggage, express mail, merchandise, and similar products, and then was retired and then parked in Arcadia, California for many years, then came to the Arizona Railway Museum where it currently is. What you see right behind me is Rio and Gila Valley 1069. Rio and Gila Valley 1069 was built by Pullman Company in 1910. This 15-foot dump door can be operated manually or with an air assist. The Rio Consolidated Copper Company has charged the name of the ownership of a number of times in the last 100 years, but the car has been remained in Arizona, donated by the Copper Basin Railroad in 2007. Rio and Gila Valley 1069 also retired and came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum. What you see right behind me is Chicago Northwestern 5022. Chicago Northwestern 5022 was built in 1950 for Chicago Northwest as Chicago Northwestern number 5022. Ran the 400 trains in mid-1960s. The steam boiler was removed and replaced with a head power generator for use in the commuter service in Chicago. At this time, the number was changed to 519, and originally Chicago Northwestern 5022 was, and also Chicago Northwestern 5022 was also known as Florida East Coast 97. Also, when the Metra took over Chicago's suburban service, the engine became Metra 519, retired in 1991 and sold in 1992 to Pacific Rail Dismantlers, who numbered her PRDX 519. It was also sold in 1997 to Monad Railway Equipment and numbered MREX 97, Florida East Coast 97, and it was numbered, it was numbered MREX 97. Then in 2006 to Sonia Orlenko, who moved the engine to the Arizona Railway Museum for display. What you see right behind me is Toronto Transit Commission number 4607. Toronto Transit Commission 4607 was built in 1930 and is a PCC trolley and was acquired for the City of Phoenix Transportation Department. The trolley car was part of a transportation display in the downtown Phoenix. Came from Toronto Transit Commission. Originally, the car was numbered 4536. Also in 1990, it was renumbered to 4607, which it is currently. Also, Toronto Transit Commission 4607 was sold to the City of Phoenix in 1996. The PCC President's Conference Committee, also the Toronto Transit Commission 4607, came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum in 2010. What you see right behind me is Homestake Mining Company number 514. Homestake Mining Company 514 is a mine car that was used on Homestake Mining Company. Homestake Mining Company 514 was also hauled in the mines and was used to haul whatever was behind and dug in the mine. And also Homestake Mining Company number 514 was retired and then came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum. What you see right behind me is Homestake Mining Company 741. Homestake Mining Company 741 is a mine car that was used on the Homestake Mining Company. Homestake Mining Company 741 also hauled in the mines and was used to haul whatever was being dug in the mine. And also Homestake Mining 741 was retired and then came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum. What you see right behind me is Homestake Mining Company number 5. Homestake Mining Company 5 was built by Henry Kirk Porter Inc. Incorporated in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1905, and is the 3290th steam locomotive built by that factory. Homestake Mining Company 5 is an 040CA four-wheeler type steam locomotive, and this locomotive track gauge is 18 inches. Also, Homestake Mining 5 also ran on compressed air with 1000 psi in the boiler with 6x10 inch cylinders. Homestake Mining Company 5 weighs 10,000 pounds on 23 inch drivers with tractive effort of 18,600 pounds. Homestake Mining Company 5 was also used on the Homestake Mining Company for several years. Then in 1985, the locomotive was retired and on display at the Mesa Museum of the Southwestern West from 1985 to 1997, then donated to the Arizona Railway Museum when the Arizona Railway Museum was located in Tumbleweed Park, and then moved to this spot in Chandler, Arizona. What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 999 741. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 999 741 was built by the International Car Company of Kenton, Ohio in 1978 for the Toledo area, Western Center, Cupola caboose, White Vision model CE-8 caboose. In 1986, it was absorbed into the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe system, and then retired in 1992. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 741 was in service in Phoenix area and then donated to the Arizona Railway Museum by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe from the Phoenix yard. What you see right behind me is Rock Island number 42. Rock Island number 42 was built by the Bud Company in 1949. Also, Rock Island 42 has the name Adil Morris. The Adil Morris coach is a sleeping car that was one of a set of 6 sleeping cars from the Seaboard Airline. This coach has double bedrooms and 10 roomettes. The coach was named Silver Meteor. Between New York and Miami, when Seaboard Airline and Atlantic Coastline merged, this car was numbered 6627. Adil Morris coach went to Amtrak in 1971 and became number 2704 and still retaining the name of the, and retired in 1986 and was purchased from Amtrak in 1992. Also, this coach says Rock Island and is numbered 42 currently, and also is seen here at the Arizona Railroad. What you see right behind me is Frisco 1456. Frisco 1456 was built by the Pullman Company and was in lot number 6769 between January and June of 1948 for the St. Louis San Francisco Railroad, which the line is known as the Frisco. I call it Frisco. The as-built configuration was 14 roomette or double bedroom, plan number 4153. The car was assigned to do such name trains as the Texas Special, the Meteor. 1967, the car was sold to Nord Corporation and reconfigured as a rolling demonstration lab and showroom for their photographic products. The new floor plan retained the 4-bedroom, removed the roomettes and replaced them with 2 display rooms and a dark room at that time was named Silver Messenger. The Nord Corporation donated the car to rail enthusiasts who operated the car and excursion service for a short time. The car was purchased by 3 friends who continued to operate the car while making upgrades. The floor plan kept the 4 bedrooms, changed the display rooms to lounge and the dark room to a shower and kitchen. In 2010, the surviving member of 3 friends donated the Frisco 1456 to the Arizona Railway Museum. Then arrived at the museum in February 2011. Also, the number and road name of the coach is currently AZMX 1456. What you see right behind me is Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Valley 204. Tucson, Cornelia, Gila Valley 204 was built by Car Factory in St. Charles, Missouri in 1993. And the Rio Grande was a great box car. Like the car was built by the Rio Grande in 1966 and sold to Tucson, Cornelia, Gila Valley. Basin service is 204. Gila Valley, Joe, served until 1996. And then it was sold to former main mine employee. Also, Tucson, Cornelia, Gila Valley 204 was silent and well stocked by Rio Arizona and came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum. What you see right behind me is Union Tank Line number 7682. Union Tank Line number 7682 was built by Union Tank Car Company in 1936 1906. Also, Union Tank Line 7682 is a riveted type construction with a light weight of 42,800 pounds. It has a capacity of 45 gallons, or fully loaded, maximum weight of 80,000 pounds. This type of car was built to carry non-pressure type liquids, ICC class 103. In the early 1970s, the car was sold to Codex Industries of Denver, Colorado. The reporting marks were changed to ADAX 1057. The car was in service until 1995 when it was sold to Busby Metals of Mesa, Arizona for scrap. Busby Metals then donated Union Tank Line 7682 to the Arizona Railway Museum. What you see right behind me is Southwest Forest Industries number 551. Southwest Forest Industries 551 was built by Bettendorf between 1917 and 1920 for one of the Southwest Forest Industries predecessors. Also, Southwest Forest Industries 511 is a logging car and was used to carry logs from the forest to the sawmill. This car was in saw service to the mill in Flagstaff and was used on the White Mountain line to the mill at McNary for a number of years. The car was on display at the sawmill in Flagstaff with Southwest Forest steam engine number 25. The car was then donated to the Arizona Railway Museum by the city of Flagstaff in 1999. What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 2562. Southern Pacific 2562 was built by Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1906. It is the 264th steamboat engine built in that factory. It's a C9 class. Southern Pacific 2562 is also a 280 consolidation type steam locomotive. It's used on the Southern Pacific Railroad. Also, Southern Pacific 2562 hauled freight trains in the past and worked in California until dieselization in 1956. Also, Southern Pacific 2562 was retired, was put on in a park for display. Then Southern Pacific 2562 was deteriorating in the park. Most was cut up and scrapped, and then the locomotive was never scrapped, but it was saved by the city of Chandler and became part of the Arizona Railway Museum in 1983. Also, Southern Pacific 2562 has been cosmetically restored and is at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler for display. Also, Southern Pacific 2562 is one of 11 surviving Southern Pacific 280s in existence. Also, you can visit the cab of Southern Pacific 2562 and even sit where the engineer fireman sits. You can also ring the locomotive's bell. That's how it's done. What you see right behind me is Magma Arizona number 10. Magma Arizona number 10 was built by Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1950. It is a Baldwin DRS rail. Purchased in late 1969, the locomotive arrived in Arizona in 1970. The engine ran in regular service from Superior, Arizona to Magma Junction, Arizona until 1991. Also, Magma Arizona 10 became part of the Arizona Railway Museum in 1994. Also, Magma Arizona 10 was even used to shunt cars and exhibits around on the museum grounds. What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 60157. Southern Pacific 60157 was built in 1942 for the Southern Pacific as a riveted tank body. Also, it was used to carry fuel like oil and all different types of loads. Southern Pacific 60157 was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum by MPC Distributing Companies. Also, Southern Pacific 60157 behind me is Union Pacific 4815. Union Pacific 4815 was built by the American Car Foundry. It was delivered to Union Pacific in 1949. It was in lot number 3032 and also was sold to the Alaska Railroad in 1971 and was painted in the Alaska Railroad scheme and was repainted when it was sold again back to Union Pacific 4815. The Union Pacific 4815 What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 459-579. Southern Pacific 459-579 was built by Pacific Car and Foundry in Renton, Washington in 1971 and is a refrigerator car. This car was once used for hauling food on board, which were perishables, to markets outside Arizona. Oranges, grapefruit, lettuce, potatoes, and melons were loaded at the docks in Mesa, Hiley, Tempe, and Phoenix for shipments to markets outside Arizona. Also, the car had onboard diesel-powered refrigeration system which could maintain the temperature inside the car just above the freezing level. Then later on, the car was retired, and in 1995 it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, when it was at the original location till moved to this area. Then in 2014 it was getting repainted till about 2017 it was completed. Today, this car can be seen at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today. What you see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 1505. Denver and Rio Grande 1505 was built by the International Car Company in Kenton, Ohio in 1966 and is a steel caboose. Denver and Rio Grande 1505 was used for the standard gauge Denver and Rio Grande Railroad on the back of freight trains many years ago, and also was used as the train crew's office as well. Then later on, this caboose was retired and was likely later used by Royal Gorge Industries, and then came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen on display today. What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 413. Southern Pacific 413 was built by American Car and Foundry in St. Charles, Missouri in 1947 and is a bay window caboose. Originally, this caboose was used by the Southern Pacific subsidiary Texas and New Orleans Railroad and originally numbered as Texas and New Orleans 512 and used behind freight trains and used as the train crew's office. Then it was used by the Southern Pacific Railroad and renumbered as Southern Pacific 413 and used on that railroad on the back of freight trains as the train crew's office. Then, in 1982, it was retired and then came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, when it was located in Tumbleweed Park till it and the museum was relocated to this area where it is seen today. What you see right behind me is United States Army C-45. United States Army C-45 was built by American Hoist Company and Derrick Company in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1943 and is a 25-ton crane. This crane was used by the United States Army many years ago and used for lifting and lowering things, as it would be used for maintenance voice service on the United States Army Railroad as well, and also it was stationed at the Navajo Army Depot just near Belmont, Arizona. It was sold to Valley Steel and Supply Company in Tempe, Arizona, where it was served till 1995.
Then it was soon retired and was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by Valley Steel and Supply Company, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 7173.
Southern Pacific 7131 was built by American Car and Foundry in St. Charles, Missouri in 1949 and is an idler flat car. Originally was built as just a flat car with a wood deck and one of several such cars constructed for the Southern Pacific Railroad, and its original number it had is unknown. Also, it was used to carry cargo that flat cars hauled many years ago. Sometime prior to 1969, it was converted to being an idler flat car and used as a tool car and assigned reporting mark as Southern Pacific MW 7028A. In 1969, it was renumbered 7131 and also paired with Southern Pacific Crane 7130. Also, it remained in service based in Tucson until decommissioned in 1989. Then, later it was moved to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, when it was located in Tumbleweed Park till it and the museum relocated to this area in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today.
What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 7130.
Southern Pacific 7130 was built by Bay City Industrial in Bay City, Michigan in 1910 and is a 120-ton crane. For many years, this crane was used by the Southern Pacific Railroad and was placed in service in Tucson, Arizona, and originally was numbered as Southern Pacific 620. In 1934, it was renumbered as Southern Pacific 7034. Then, in 1940, renumbered as Southern Pacific 7028. Then, in 1969, renumbered as Southern Pacific 7130, and also it remained in service based in Tucson until decommissioned in 1989. Then later it was moved to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, when it was located in Tumbleweed Park till it and the museum relocated to this area in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today.
What you see right behind me is WR Gray 779.
WR Gray 779 was built in 1938 and is a three-dome tanker car. This car was used for the W.R. Grace Company and was used to carry chemicals or solvents, which is what the three separate compartments were used to carry, and W.R. Grace Company had offices in Chandler, Arizona. Also, this car was used on freight trains on like a line of tanker cars and for many years. Then, later, the car was retired, and in 1986, the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona bought it from Valley Steel and Supply, and the car was then moved to the museum, where it can be seen preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 33219.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 33219 was built by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad in Cleburne, Texas in 1967 and is a pulp flat car. Originally, the car was built as a GA 80 mill gondola car. It was later rebuilt as a pulp flat car and was used in the forest factory service on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad in northern Arizona to haul pulpwood logs to the mill. Then later on the car was retired and then came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona at its original location till being moved to this site with the museum where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Arizona Railway Museum 7013.
Arizona Railway Museum 7013. It was built by General Steel Industries in Granite City, Illinois in 1966 and is a flat car. It was possibly once used by the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad many years ago, and it was once used to carry cargo that a flat car like this one once hauled many years ago. Also, it is called a Commonwealth-type car, and the paint was formerly owned by Commonwealth Steel and was rather ubiquitous during that period. It was used in general freight service. The Southern Pacific subsequently obtained it, and it became part of the Southern Pacific 70,000 series flat cars. Later on, the car was retired, and in 2009 it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and numbered as Arizona Railway Museum 7013. And in 2013 and 2014, it had been cosmetically restored as well, and today it is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum where it is today.
What you see right behind me is San Manuel 184.
San Manuel 184 was built by Mager Car Company in Clifton, New Jersey in 1955 and is an ore-riding hopper car. This car is one of 3 rider cars built for the San Manuel, Arizona Railroad, and it ran on the lead or rear of the train between the San Manuel smelter facility and the mine. The car was in the lead on the empty shove to the mine and trailed, bringing loads to the smelter. The car was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by Capstone Mining through the generosity of Ron Llewellyn. Marco Crane was contracted to lift the car from the dirt onto active rails. After a little mechanical work, the car moved on its own wheels from San Manuel to Hayden Junction on September 12, 2017, with no issues. While it was on the Copper Basin, it was given a thorough inspection by the Union Pacific mechanical foreman Aaron Sassaman in preparation for the move to the museum, and Copper Basin moved the car to Magma Junction on September 20, and then Union Pacific moved the car from Magma Junction to McQueen Junction on September 22. Then Union Pacific moved it from McQueen Junction, and then the car arrived at the museum. Today, it is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Copper Basin 341,002.
Copper Basin 341,002 was built by Baldwin Lima Hamilton in 1961 and is an ore gondola car. Originally, this car was used by the Southern Pacific Railroad as Southern Pacific 341,002 and was built specifically to haul concentrated ore from the American Smelting and Refining Company, Ray Mine, to the copper refining plant in El Paso, Texas. The car is equipped with two large bottom dumping doors for quick unloading at the smelter. In 1993, the car was purchased by the Copper Basin and continued to haul concentrate for the Copper Basin, and it also retained its original number. Then, later on, the car was retired, and in 2015, it was then donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today.
What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 359-246.
Southern Pacific 359-246 was built by General American Transportation Company and is a sugar beet gondola car. This car was used to carry beets whenever it was used by the Southern Pacific Railroad, and the wooden sides provided a better surface than metal for the beets. Upper extensions were added around 1959 to increase capacity. It was typical of those that brought sugar beets to the Spreckels sugar processing plant at the northwestern corner of McQueen Riggs Road in Chandler, Arizona. The plant opened in 1967 and processed the beets into sugar plus a small amount of granular sugar for the local market. The plant closed in 1984 when soft drink manufacturers switched to using less expensive, high fructose corn syrup. The car was acquired by Spreckels' parent company, Imperial Sugar, after the beet trains ended in the 1990s, and Spreckels' parent company, Imperial Sugar, donated it to the Western Pacific Railroad Museum in Portola, California. Then, when the Western Pacific Railroad Museum decided to reduce their collection and offered the car to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and it was donated to the museum, and in 2019, it was moved to the museum and seen on display where it is today.
You can see right here, here's a Trackmobile here at the museum. They use this to move their equipment around whenever they decide to, here at the Arizona Railway Museum. And that 9,000 sign, I believe, means it can pull 9,000 tons of train cars, it looks like. This was made by Marmon, as you can see, and yeah, and this one, I think this one's numbered 652, and I have no clue where this one came off of. Let me go to this side and find out. And it doesn't say, but yeah, here it is on here today. What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 56.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 56 was built by Pullman in 1923 and is a business car. Originally, it was numbered as Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 34, and for many years it had been used on the back passenger trains when used on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and in 1928 it was assigned to the Vice President of Operations. In 1947, the air conditioning was added. In 1953, it was rebuilt by the Topeka shops in Topeka, Kansas, and the interior was modified. In 1956, roller bearings were installed. In 1966, it was assigned to the Assistant General Manager of the Eastern Lines of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. In 1973, upgraded in Fort Worth, Texas, and renumbered as Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 56, and the car was modified to be completely self-contained and not require a steam generator or power car. Then later the car was retired, and after retirement the car has seen a number of private ownerships as well as Conrail and was numbered PPCX 800,156 and was used in charter service and even hauled on the back of Amtrak passenger trains. Then, in 2016, the car was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by Tom and Susan Hoback, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend 304.
Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend 304 was built likely around the 1900s and is a flat car. This car was once used on the Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend Railroad, hauling logs for many years. Then, in 2005, it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today. And in 2013, it received a new floor and a new coat of paint, and the car looked good as new. Today, it is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is today. Also, the shipping container on it was used by the Southern Pacific for hauling less than carload customer shipments as well.
What you see right behind me is the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Vista Canyon.
The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Vista Canyon was built by Pullman Standard in 1947 and is a lounge observation car. For many years, this car was used on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Super Chief passenger train and is one of 4 built for the Super Chief. The car had 1 double bedroom, 4 drawing rooms, and a round-end observation lounge. In 1956, the round end was modified to allow use of the car in mid-train service. Later on, the car was soon retired, and in 1994, it was added with a small buffet kitchen when the car went to private owners, and it was numbered as PPCX 800,504 and also used in charter service as well. In 2001, it was then donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by Fred and Dale Springer and preserved at the museum where it can be seen on display today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 3079.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 3079 was built by the Budd Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1937 and is a passenger coach. Also, the car is named Diablo Canyon. This car was used for many years on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and people would also ride on board it whenever it was used on passenger trains for the railroad many years ago. In 1969, it was sold to the New Jersey Department of Transportation. Later, it was donated to the United Railways Historical Societies of New Jersey by New Jersey Department of Transportation. In 1991, it was bought by John McMath, and he configured the car for personal use and renamed it Cocoa Grove and stripped out the coach interior and installed 4 bedrooms, kitchen, small dining area, and a solarium lounge at the vestibule end. In 1996, the car met the requirements for Amtrak service and has continued to be mechanically certified. The car is the oldest Amtrak certified and operable built car in America. In 2005, John donated the car to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and Union Pacific delivered the car to the museum, and also the car is even numbered with PPCX 900,378 as well. Today, the car is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today.
What you see right behind me is Arizona Railway Museum 1.
Arizona Railway Museum 1 was built by Plymouth Locomotive Works in Plymouth, Ohio in 1943 and is the 4463rd diesel locomotive built by that factory and is an ML8 switcher type diesel locomotive. Also, the locomotive is named George E. Holt. Originally, the locomotive was used for the United States Army Railroad and originally numbered as United States Army 7595 and was likely used for shunting cars at an Army base many years ago when it was used by the United States Army Railroad, and it was stationed at the Army Air Corps Victorville Advanced Flying School in Victorville, California. In 1966, it was then sold to private company M. Lummis and Company of Richmond, California. Later, it was owned by Pacific Railroad Contractors of Torrance, California, and then Railroad Builders of Myra, Loma, California. Then later, the locomotive was retired, and in 1988, the locomotive was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by the railroad builders, and the locomotive was restored to operation, and it was repainted blue and renumbered as Arizona Railway Museum 1. And in 2005, in honor of the locomotive's long-term caretaker, it was named after George E. Holt, and the locomotive even operated on the museum grounds. In 2011, the air compressor failed, which caused extensive collateral damage to the engine, front gear, casing, and radiator. Then it was going under restoration till 2019 when it was finally complete, and it was once again operating. And today, it is sometimes used to move equipment around on the museum grounds as well.
What you see right behind me is Kennecott Copper Company 801.
Kennecott Copper 801 was built by General Electric in Schenectady, New York in 1957 and is the 33104th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a 25-ton type diesel locomotive. This locomotive was used by Kennecott Copper but lettered as Western Knapp Engineering and numbered 1 and working in Hayden, Arizona while Western Knapp was building the Hayden smelter in 1957 and lettered for Kennecott in 1958. This locomotive was used at the Hayden smelter for slag disposal service when slag disposal was no longer required after the smelter process was changed in the mid-1970s, and the locomotive was rebuilt and painted in bicentennial red, white, and blue and used for general in-plant switching. It moved to adjacent Azarco Smelter, which stands for American Smelting and Refining Company, after Kennecott sold Ray Mines Division to American Smelting and Refining Company in 1986. The Jake Jacobson acquired the locomotive in 2017. Copper Basin folks rebuilt and repainted the locomotive to pristine condition to donation to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona. The chain drive was removed for transport by rail to the museum, and it was moved from Hayden to Magma Junction in September that year. The Union Pacific Railroad then moved it from Magma Junction to McQueen Junction, and then moved the locomotive from McQueen Junction to the museum, and the drive chain was reinstalled. Today, this locomotive is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today, and also it is sometimes fired up and operates on the museum grounds and even used to move equipment around as well.
Okay, you can see here's a Wig Wag displayed here at the museum, and it's been here for a long time. I think came to the collection, and I don't know, probably once it got here, I'm sure. But as it's here, you could even operate it. So push the button on this side of it, and we'll go to work. And I'll have you listen to her sing. And that's how it's done. What you see right behind me is in Topeka and Santa Fe, Denehotso.
The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Denehotso was built by Pullman Standard in 1938 and is a lounge observation car. The car was originally named Pullman Denehotso and originally built as a round-end observation car. In 1948, the car was sold to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and for many years this car was used on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Super Chief passenger train and is one of 6 built for the Super Chief. The car had 1 double bedroom, 4 drawing rooms, and a round-end observation lounge. In 1954, the car was rebuilt, changing the round end to a blunt end and adding 1 seat to the lounge. While on the railroad, the car also carried the number 1853. This was for inventory purposes only. In 1968, the car was retired and was donated to Steamtown Foundation in Bellow Falls, Vermont. Steamtown later moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and some pieces of equipment were sold at auction. This car was sold to Bill Feuring, who sold the car to museum member Mike Salwitz. In 1995, the Arizona Railway Museum purchased the car from Mike, and today it is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen on display today. Today, it is the only remaining observation car from the original train set and can be found at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 2870.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 2870 was built by Pullman Standard in 1947 and is a chair car. This car was used on passenger trains for many years and was used on Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe's El Capitan passenger train, and passengers would even ride on board it whenever it was used on the El Capitan passenger train as well. In 1971, it was then sold to Amtrak and renumbered 4484, and had been used on passenger trains whenever it was used by Amtrak as well. Then, in 1976, the car was retired and it was sold to Pullman Pizzeria in La Cruces, New Mexico. Then, in 1981, it was sold to Jim Bennett of La Cruces, New Mexico. Then, in 1990, Jim then sold the car to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 504.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 504 was built by Pullman Standard in the 1950s and is a dome car. Also, the car is named Plaza Teos. This car was used on passenger trains for many years on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and was used on the Super Chief passenger train, and also passengers would ride on board it and even ride in the dome and have a good view of the scenery. Also, the upper dome featured swivel chairs, while below was a lounge, cocktail room, and the turquoise room for private dining. Later, the car was then used by Amtrak and renumbered as Amtrak 9354 and likely used on the Coast Starlight. Then the car was eventually sold to Dr. Cushman, who operated the car as part of the Broadway dinner train in Nashville, Tennessee. Then it was retired, and after service on the dinner train, the car was stored at the Tennessee Central Railway Museum in Nashville, Tennessee. In 2008, it was then donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and was restored on the inside. Today, it can be seen at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Southern 16.
Southern 16 was built by Pullman in 1879 and is a business car. Originally, this car was used by the South Carolina Railroad in Charleston, South Carolina, and was originally an office car. It was used by the South Carolina and Georgia Railroad, which absorbed the Southern Railroad in 1899 and originally numbered as South Carolina and Georgia 101. In 1899, it was then used by the Southern Railway and renumbered as Southern 115, and for the next several years was used by the Southern Railway on passenger trains, and it was assigned to Joseph H. Sands, who was Assistant General Superintendent of the Eastern District. Then, about 1903, it was then renumbered as Southern Railway 111, and it was assigned to S.J. Collins, who had Joseph's title, then to Horace Baker, who then had Joseph and S.J.'s title in 1904. In 1905 to E.H. Copeman, who was General Superintendent. Then in 1907 to H.E. Hutchins, who was the general superintendent of the Northern District. Then, in 1912, was renumbered as Southern Railway 11. Then, in 1914, it was then assigned to R.E. Simpson, who was general manager of lines east on the Northern District. In 1920, renumbered as Southern Railway 9. In 1921, it was assigned to R.B. Pegram, who was the Vice President of Tax, Fuel, and Publicity Department, and that year it was renumbered as Southern Railway 6. In 1928, assigned to J.B. Akers, who was an assistant to Vice President of Maintenance of Way. In 1931, it was assigned to Bernard Herrmann, who was a chief engineer with J.B. Akers when he was an assistant chief. In 1934, it was held reserved. In 1935, it was assigned to L.C. Schultz, who was a superintendent of motive power. In 1946, it was renumbered as Southern Railway 16, and it could be possible it stayed with L.C. Schultz in Knoxville, Tennessee, because he remained in that position until he retired in 1960. Then, it was soon retired, and in 1967, Houston Sports Association in Houston, Texas had it. In 1970, it was sold to Phoenix Cotton Pickery in Phoenix, Arizona. In 1982, it was sold to Russell Joslin and named Desert Valley by him. Then, in 1995, Russell donated the car to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today.
What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 2741.
Southern Pacific 7241 was built by St. Louis Car Company in St. Louis, Missouri in 1937 and is a horse car. Also, the paint you see on this car is the original paint scheme, and the car was used for having horses on board and used for passenger trains on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and it transported racehorses between racetracks and other points around the country during the decades when passenger trains were the principal means of transportation. It has a very wide end door at one end for loading horses from special platforms to which it could be backed up, with a smaller door within it for car-to-car passage, the 3 wide sliding doors per side, the equipment needed to feed and care for the horses, and accompanying attendants and handlers, and space for Railway Express agency use. In 1951, the car was converted to a postal storage car for use on the Golden State, and it was renumbered as Southern Pacific 4300, and the car was repainted with the paint scheme to red over silver of the Golden State. In 1953, it was then repainted to an aluminum color with a red letterboard and the Golden State insignia on the side. In 1958, it was repainted again, but this time to silver with orange letterboard of the Sunset Route. In the early 1960s, it saw the color changed to the solid gray used on all of the head and passenger equipment. In 1966, the car was retired from revenue service and converted to a heavy tool car at the Sacramento shops in Sacramento, California, and used for maintenance of way and renumbered as Southern Pacific 59, Southern Pacific 5984, and the roller bearing wheel sets were removed for use on the heavyweight business cars. In the early 1970s, the car was moved to Phoenix, Arizona for use by the car repair forces. It was stationed for a time at the Tempe Depot in Tempe, Arizona before moving to Phoenix Yard. Then, in 1994, the car was sold for dismantled to Smith and Charles Salvage. In 1995, Jim Smith donated the car to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and in 1996 the car was moved to the museum by the Southern Pacific Railroad, and also it had been repainted and cosmetic restoration was completed, and today it is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 580.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 580 was built by Pullman in 1910 and is a passenger coach. Originally, it was built as a wood car on steel frame. For many years, this car was used on passenger trains on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. Around 1917, it was rebuilt as a men's smoking car. In 1938, it was rebuilt as a crew kitchen diner for use on a wreck train out of Barstow, California, and numbered as Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 198-993. Later on, the car was retired and was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and it was delivered to the museum by the Union Pacific in 1997, and today it is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum where it is today, and the car had been going under cosmetic restoration on the inside and the outside starting in 2006, and then in 2011, the paint job was completed. Today, the car is preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 405.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 405 was built by Pullman in 1926 and is a business car. This car was built as one of 18 superintendent cars, and it was even used on the back of passenger trains when used on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and used across the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe system. Then later it was retired and removed from service in 1966 and ended its service in La Junta, Colorado, and was sold to San Angelo Tank Car in San Angelo, Texas in 1968. Then it was stored at the Temple Railroad Heritage Museum in Temple, Texas. Then, in 2008, it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today. And also, it was repainted before 2011 to its Pullman green color as well.
What you see right behind me is Southern Pacific 4740.
Southern Pacific 4740 was built by Pacific Car and Foundry in Renton, Washington in 1980 and is a bay window caboose. Southern Pacific 4740 was used on freight trains many years ago on the Southern Pacific Railroad as the train crew's office. Then later on, Southern Pacific 4740 was retired and then in 1996 came to be part of the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today. And also, it is also used for birthday parties as well.
Okay, you could see behind me and right here is some speeders and MOW boggies, and these cars were once used for the railroads a long time ago to help inspect tracks when crews went on the line to inspect them. And also, here they are today at the Arizona Railway Museum in the collection. Let's look at more on the other side of the tracks. Okay, here's some more that you could see on the caddy corner rails, and sometimes they run these speeders here, like all those speeders I was just talking about. And yeah, what you see right behind me is Kennecott Copper Company 528.
Kennecott Copper Corp 528 was built by Differential Car Company in Findlay, Ohio, likely somewhere in the 1920s, and is a side dump gondola car. For many years, this car was used to haul rocks and ballast for railroad construction and maintenance, but wasn't designed for hauling copper ore. The tilting bed of this car can be actuated by compressed air to tip to either side for dumping the load along the tracks. Then it was retired and sat in the dead line for years. In 2015, it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by Jake Jacobson, where it is seen today. Also, it could not be moved to the museum by rail due to friction-bearing axles. Instead, it was moved to the museum by truck and lifted and lowered by crane. In 2021, it was repainted and looking good as new as well. Today, it can be seen on display at the museum where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend 15.
Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend 15 was built by the Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend Railroad in 1944 and is a wooden caboose. It served the Phelps Dodge copper mine in Ao, Arizona. It was originally painted in the present color when used by the Tucson, Cornelia, and Gila Bend Railroad and used for freight service on the railroad. It was also used for numerous years to provide passenger service between Gila Bend and Ao, and the slide doors allow for freight loading on one end. Also, it was then repainted red with the cupola painted yellow and likely renumbered 1. Then later on it was retired, and in 2006 it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by the Phelps Dodge Copper, and then in 2012 it was being repainted and likely finished in 2013. In 2020, the paint was sanded in many certain spots, and it soon got a new coat of paint as well. And the project was finished in 2021. Today, the car can be seen preserved at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it can be seen today.
What you see right behind me is the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Verde Valley.
The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Verde Valley was built by Pullman Standard in 1942 and is a 664 sleeper car. This car features 6 sections, 6 roomettes, and 4 double bedrooms. Originally, the car was named for Pullman as Pullman Verde Valley. It is named for the well-watered valley in northern Arizona. It was sold to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad and kept the name. It was used on passenger trains for the railroad as well. It often saw service on the California Limited, which ran between Chicago and Los Angeles, California, but through Kansas City, Missouri, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Flagstaff, Arizona. After World War II, it was assigned to the California Special and ran from Houston, Texas to Los Angeles, California. In 1968, the California Special was discontinued and the car was then donated to the Gulf Coast chapter of the NRHS, and they continued to run the car until Amtrak made it unsuitable. In 2015, the car was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona by the Houston Railroad Museum and Gulf Coast chapter. It also may have been spray painted during transfer to the site. In 2017, it was parked in the Union Pacific Houston yard and was damaged by Hurricane Harvey in Texas. Then, a few weeks later, it was moved to the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona. It was eventually repaired and repainted and looking good as new. Today, it is seen on display at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 543.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 543 was built by the Budd Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1964 and is a high-level passenger coach. This car was used on the San Francisco Chief Passenger Train on the railroad. It was used to carry passengers on board for a number of years when used by the railroad. In 1971, it was sold to Amtrak and renumbered 9917. Then it was renumbered 39917. It was used on Amtrak passenger trains as well. Later on, it was retired and sat in storage. Then in 2019, it was acquired by the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and it was soon restored to its Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe look as well. Today, it is seen on display at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 708.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 708 was built by the Budd Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1956 and is a high-level passenger coach. This car was used on the El Capitan passenger train on the railroad. It was used to carry passengers on board for a number of years when used by the railroad. In 1971, it was sold to Amtrak and renumbered 9948. Then it was renumbered 39948. It was used on Amtrak passenger trains as well. Later on, it was retired and sat in storage. Then, in 2019, it was acquired by the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and it was soon restored to its Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe look as well. Today, it is seen on display at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, where it is today. Okay, you could see right here is a Trackmobile built in Harvey, Illinois by the Whitting Corp. This car was likely used for probably the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, or maybe the Santa Fe Railroad. It says Zephyr on it, and probably Western Pacific or Southern Pacific, but who knows. But yeah, it later was acquired by the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, but here it is today, and they sometimes use this to move their equipment, their exhibits, which is their train cars and locomotives around. Okay, here's another Whitting Trackmobile that was also built by Whitting Corp in Harvey, Illinois, and it's been part of the collection for a number of years. And also, they sometimes use it to move their display pieces, locomotives, and cars around as well. And here it is at the museum today. I wonder what railroad this one could have been used for. It's probably unknown, but yeah. What you see right behind me is Kennecott Copper Company 81. Kennecott Copper Company 81 was built by the Plymouth Locomotive Works in Plymouth, Ohio in 1949 and is the 5490th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a 20-ton JLB type diesel locomotive. It was in service at the smelter in Hayden, Arizona and worked primarily for Ray Consolidated Copper. When the mine operation was purchased by Kennecott Copper Corp., the locomotive was then relettered for that company and renumbered 81. It may have been possible this locomotive was renumbered 881. The mine shops extended the cab on the engineered side by approximately 18 inches. Also, it was likely for better visibility. The original motor was removed and replaced with a Cummins diesel engine and Allison transmission, which connected to the original manual gearbox. It was likely then used by American Smelting and Refining Company, and it was repainted white. Then, in 2015, it was donated to the Arizona Railway Museum by J. Chris Fall, who retired from American Smelting and Refining Company, and it was moved to the museum by truck, and it was still painted white when it arrived. In 2021, it was repainted to being orange. Then it was soon fired up and came back to life as well, and repairs took about 18 months. It is even sometimes seen operating as well and likely used to help move equipment around on the grounds as well. What you see right behind me is the Pullman Federal. The Pullman Federal was built by Pullman in 1911 and is a business car. Originally, the car was named for Pullman as Pullman Federal. In 1933, it was sold to the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad and was renumbered 98. It was then renamed Pocono. For many years, this car was used on the back of passenger trains on the railroad and used by railroad executives as well. Then, in 1961, the Erie Railroad merged with the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western and became the Erie-Lackawanna. Later, the Erie-Lackawanna sold the car to Ringling Brothers, and it was used on the circus train and kept the number. Then it was bought by a private owner, which it is also based at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, when it isn't out on the tracks as well. It was given a reporting mark and number as PPCX 800,713 and repainted in a Baltimore and Ohio paint scheme. Today, it is usually based here at the Arizona Railway Museum in Chandler, Arizona, and sometimes it is coupled onto Amtrak passenger trains as well. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed learning about trains with me today in Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Also, I hope to see y'all again in the next segment, and if you didn't subscribe to the channel yet, please be sure to. And the subscribe button is just below the video screen, and also, if you didn't give my Facebook page a like yet, here's where you can find it, as well as the Instagram page. Be sure to follow it as well, only if you didn't yet. And also, please be sure to get your merch at Teesprings, and all the links to Facebook, Instagram, and Teesprings is in the description box below. And remember to subscribe to the Train Guy. So this is Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show, signing out until next time. All aboard!